Once a year the full moon glooms, children dress in costumes, jack-o'-lanterns come alive and sing this ghoulish tune. Witches fly upon their brooms, spirits rise from their tombs, creatures of the night will hunt for candy to consume. Little kiddies all beware of fearsome frights and sneaky scares, ghosts and goblins prowl about to catch you unaware. Better find a good disguise to blend in if you're wise. Go from door to door and you'll collect a sweet surprise. Creepy, crawly, slime and goo, werewolves howl and zombies drool. Something's waiting in the dark to jump out and yell boo. Monsters roaming everywhere, tag along if you dare. You will have a night of frights and fun beyond compare. Once a year the full moon glooms, children dress in costumes, jack-o'-lanterns come alive and sing this ghoulish tune. Witches fly upon their brooms, spirits rise from their tombs, creatures of the night will hunt for candy to consume. Little kiddies all beware of fearsome frights and sneaky scares, ghosts and goblins prowl about to catch you unaware. Better find a good disguise to blend in if you're wise. Go from door to door and you'll collect a sweet surprise. Creepy, crawly, slime and goo, werewolves howl and zombies drool. Something's waiting in the dark to jump out and yell boo. Monsters roaming everywhere, tag along if you dare. You will have a night of frights and fun beyond compare. Look out, take care, ghosts and goblins prowl about to catch you unaware. Don't run, don't scream, they just want to wish you all a happy Halloween. And when they're through, they'll leave you with a final boo.
Afraid of the dark? Are you scared? You know, I am you.
Rage, it's almost Halloween. Do you have any favorite ghost stories? Oh! Okay, follow you to Cabin 22? On my way. Dave Weaver and his dog Rage needed a vacation. What they got was a Halloween weekend that led them into a terrifying adventure of a lifetime. A murder mystery wrapped in the dark spell of a place built on sour soil. A land whose curse was only held at bay by the knowing abilities of a few dedicated people and a species other than human, holding on to its very existence, and others fighting for their very souls. Cabin 22, a haunting original novella, a traditional holiday reading, starts its 6-night presentation on October 25th at 8 p.m. Eastern Time on Journey Through the Gate on YouTube and Rumble.
Are you there?
Jake walked to the rock wall while Crow spoke of the conclusions they had come to and the fight ahead. Jake had a large leather pouch and started to take things out of it and laid them on the ground. Grey Wolf spoke up now, adding in something that confused Dave a little bit, but he listened intently with the others. Those that walk through the veil will come tonight. Chuck shook his head in agreement. They will fight for those who dwell on the mountain top. Jake will do a quick cleansing and protection ceremony here, before we battle the energy below. It is ancient, Charles, and it has been fed well today. It is stronger now. Well, holy shit, Crow. Ain't we got enough to deal with tonight? Crow smiled and agreed, but added this. Charles, if we do not go to it, it most assuredly will come to us. Those it controls are growing weak. I believe there were some bad deeds that fed it recently. It plays on the evil inside of a person. It magnifies and twists the cracks in a person's protective light. Those that died here today had the means to be good people, but greed and envy took over, my guides tell me. We must stand together in what goodness we have inside. Together, that will be stronger than any evil could bring. Grey Wolf had already walked to where Jake was. Dave watched in fascination as the two men set white sticks on fire, put them in what looked like a shell, and waved a feather through the smoke as they spoke out to the night. Each one had a shell, and smoke billowed around them. Jake had what looked like a fan made of black feathers, and he seemed to waft the smoke all around Grey Wolf now. Then Grey Wolf did the same to Jake. Starting at his feet, he walked around him as Jake stood palms out till Grey Wolf reached his face. Then Jake seemed to cup the smoke with his hands and almost wash his face with it, bringing the smoke all around his head, and repeated it. Joe saw Dave watching and explained that this was a smudging to cleanse negative energies off, to cleanse and protect, also to prepare your spirit for battle. Chuck agreed and added, "It is white sage, sweetgrass, and other herbs. Line up, 'cause we are next." Dave caught off guard. "What, me? I don't know." He stumbled through words and thoughts. "I mean, you think we would be protected somehow just because your friend puts some white smoke around you?" Dave was just startled and meant no harm, but got his answer as Jake seemed to appear right behind him and said, "Yes, because my friend blew smoke around me. Palms out, my friend." Jake smiled a knowing smile at Dave, and Rage barked and wagged his tail. Okay, looks like I'm outnumbered here." Jake looked at Rage and back at Dave. "I told you he knew things." Dave did as he was told, and the others lined up next to him. George quickly moved in line, and Sheriff Cook and Bubba took off their hats, as did Chuck, each one taking a turn as the smoke billowed around them, and Jake and Grey Wolf walked down the line. When Jake reached Rage, Dave got to see something that even surprised him from this partner of his, and well, Dave just didn't think that was possible. Jake just held out the smoking shell toward Rage, and Rage barked once, stretched out his paws toward Jake, and bowed his head. Jake smiled and circled the dog with the smoke. Jake said something Dave didn't understand, and Rage popped up and wagged his tail and circled Jake as if he too had his own protection ceremony. Jake laughed and smiled and rubbed the dog's head. "We have work to do, my friend," and Rage answered back with a paw to his hand and a bark in agreement. "Some dog there, Dave," George smiled. Grey Wolf announced he would go to see May and the others and do the same there, and took the back way to the lodge. Crow was just finishing outlining the fire circle with the gray wormwood from his bag and a huge handful of what looked like rock salt to Dave. Joe leaned toward Dave and said, "We can go in the circle now. We're cleansed," and slapped Dave on the back as he did.
If you live in a New Jersey zip code and have 0 DUIs in the last 5 years, listen carefully.
May unlocked the door and threw her arms around Grey Wolf. "Oh, I'm so glad you are here, and you've got your smudging stuff. Oh, I'm so relieved," she said as she walked him through the back to the kitchen and the others. "Open that kitchen window, Tom. We're getting our saging." Everyone greeted Grey Wolf, and Tom lifted the window above the sink, and all those in the kitchen, including Tater, seemed to know just what to do. Greta closed her eyes and breathed in a cleansing smoke and looked calm and serene as she did. Tater seemed to take it in even deeper and almost cried as he looked into Grey Wolf's eyes. Grey Wolf whispered something to him, and the big man wrapped his friend in a bear hug and squeezed. "Oh, thank you. Oh, thank you, Grey Wolf." "It is all right, my friend. Things will be different for you now, I believe." Tater hugged him once again, heard a sound, and looked up toward the window. "Ah!" he shouted and pulled back and pointed. "What, Tater?" Tom asked as Greta and May reached toward the table where they had laid their weapons. Something. I saw something looking in." Tom went to the wall and switched off the lights as the others moved back away from the window to get a better look outside. Tom moved slowly toward the window, and Grey Wolf held out his hand to use Greta's shotgun, and she gave it to him, moving in closer to May. Grey Wolf moved the other way toward the window as Tom exclaimed, "Oh, man, would you look at that?" He saw no one looking in the window, but on it was a print that looked like a huge wolf paw on the outside of the window glass, yet it was upside down. Grey Wolf reached the window with the butt of the shotgun and lowered it slow, leaned over the sink and looked up. He saw no trace of anything moving out there. One of these crafty creatures was laying on the roof looking in, he thought to himself. They want us outside. They are trying to get us to go out there, to their territory. One is on the roof. He spoke in matter-of-fact tones, no surprise or fear in his voice. "We will not do so." May whispered, "Those sneaky bastards!" and raised the aim of her shotgun to the ceiling, and Greta raised her hand to her mouth. "Oh, Charles, we have to tell him." Tom added, "It's been on the roof watching us in here. That is as creepy as it gets, Grey Wolf." They work well together. If we run outside, we run into another. Greta then reached in her apron pocket and pulled out the walkie, held it close to her mouth, and spoke calmly. "George, are you there?" Inside the circle, the men sat again, keeping an eye on their own part of the woods. Jake was by Dave and knelt down to watch what Rage was looking at off in the distance. All at once, George's vest pocket started to talk. "George, are you there?" It said faintly but clear enough for the others to hear. George startled and lifted the walkie from his pocket. "Yes, Greta, I am here." "George, you need to talk with Grey Wolf," came Greta's voice louder now. "Okay, my love, put him on then." A strong voice came over the device. "Can the sheriff and Charles hear me, George?" The men both nodded and moved closer to George. "They can, Grey Wolf. Is everything okay?" "Chuck, one is on the roof of the lodge. It is trying to separate. Stay there. The others cannot be far. Jake, it is time." Chuck held out his hand and George gave him the walkie. "Did you see which way it went?" "I did not." "He either jumped or is still there. It is too quiet." The men were all standing up, weapons drawn. Jake looked at Dave. "Do not let him leave the circle yet," and nodded toward Rage. Dave cupped a hand under Rage's collar and reached for the leash in his pocket. Rage's gaze was over the roof of the lodge and beyond. All of the men stared there now, trying to focus on the shadows and blackness there. Jake and Crow threw something in the fire that made a huge flare-up in the flames and sent a smell that burst from it and lingered in the air. "Keep your eyes there, too," Crow instructed, and pointed in the opposite direction into the dark woods behind them. "If they want your attention over there, they're coming from over here." Jake and Crow stepped out of the circle, and Bill Cook and Chuck with them. "Stay right there. Do not leave this circle," Sheriff Cook ordered, and the rest of the men listened.
The government is banning this $39 air purifier next month, and this is your last shot to get the original NASA-powered version.
"We just need a better look, fellas. We won't go far," Chuck promised them. The four men walked in unison toward the lodge. Rage growled from the circle, and Jake looked back to him, found his gaze, and followed it. There, on the roof of the lodge, he saw a shadow move. It was behind a large tree that hung over the lodge's roof. Jake silently pointed, and Chuck and the sheriff lifted their weapons toward the spot. Bill Cook flicked the switch on his flashlight, held it to the barrel of his rifle, and the shadow moved. Everyone froze. The shadow seemed to grow behind the tree as the thing stood up from a crouch. It peered around the hefty trunk of the tree, and Sheriff Cook's light caught its eyes. Chuck moved the shotgun. The slugs he had loaded it with that day would stop it dead for sure, but he knew it was a bit too far away to be accurate. Bill had a better chance with his rifle, and he waited. The thing almost seemed to bounce backwards and out of sight at an amazing rate of speed, but not quick enough for Bill not to notice it looked charred somehow, like it had been burned. "It will move to the shadows, Bill," Jake said, and they moved a bit to see the back of the building. "There," Crow said and pointed. There, perched on the stone wall behind the lodge, just beyond the large carved eagle statue Chuck had been working on that day, was the beast. The moonlight backlit the thing that had to be 8 feet tall or more. Even crouching down, it was huge. Bill Cook moved his beam on it quickly, found it with his scope, and it indeed looked at it as if it had been on fire. One of its eyes ran with a wet goo that trailed down its face, and Bill aimed in and began to squeeze the trigger as the thing looked back at him through the scope. All at once, a large brownish-gray thing seemed to emerge behind it. Pulling itself up behind the burnt creature, it seemed to keep coming bigger and bigger, but the wolf thing just stared at Bill. The hairy thing's head was huge and seemed even larger than the wolf beast by far. It lurched over the rougarou thing and in one swoop grabbed it around its waist in a gigantic arm, opened its massive mouth and bit down on the thing's head and shook it like a rag doll. They both fell backwards into the night and down the cliff into the rocks below. Jake took off first. The others outside the circle followed. They eased up to the rock wall's edge and looked over. "Holy!" Chuck whispered. Jake broke in. "They are here, Charles." Bill shone down the beam of his light, catching some of the rocks below. The drop was enormous, and just no way something would survive that, he thought. "Look!" Jake pointed, and Sheriff shined the bit of light his flashlight struggled to give, and they caught one hairy leg disappear into the woods below, dragging a bloody and burnt wolf-man-looking thing behind it. Sheriff Cook turned to Jake. "Here we go, brother," Jake replied. "Indeed, my friend, indeed." Crow got back to the circle first and asked George to let Grey Wolf know what had just happened. "Grey Wolf," George whispered into the walkie now. "One is gone. The one on the roof. Also, Jake says the helpers are here. One took the wolf thing right over the cliff." Grey Wolf answered back, "That is a good thing, my friend. Keep watch. There will be more. We are okay here." Jake, Chuck, and Sheriff Bill returned to the circle. As Dave was trying to convince himself of what he saw, "I did not just see that man. I did not just see that, Joe." Joe Parker started to ease his friend's mind when they heard a rustle from behind them and up the road. All the men in the circle turned around toward it, turning their flashlights on it at the same time. Dave noticed that Rage was wagging his tail. A young girl with pink hair stopped in her tracks. She threw her hands over her head and said, "Hey, man, chill out. It's just us." And popped a pink bubblegum pop to finish it off. The men lowered their weapons as the rest of the family came around the corner. Rose arm in arm with Clay and Will close behind. Dave said aloud, "Hey, that's the girl that was carving pumpkins." The sheriff pushed back his hat and tried his best to get order. "How do, folks? We have a slight incident here. Could I get you all to move over here behind us till we can get you inside?" Rumblings of "what's happenings?" and "it will be just fine" went around quickly. Rage was truly drawn to Carney, and she pet and hugged him, while the others she came with asked questions and got very few answers. Chuck told them, "Please take a seat," and Joe could explain better, "Just come stay by the fire." The group did as they were asked, and Rose caught Jake's eyes, held out her hand, and said, "I'm Rose, and they are here, aren't they?" Jake smiled. "They are, and you are here to help, I feel." Rose smiled and said, "We will do what we can." Carney jumped in and stuck out her hand toward Jake. "Carney, pleased to meet you." Jake touched her hand and felt an energy even stronger than Rose's was. "You are the one my guides told me about," he smiled. Carney smiled back.
Jack Chitterelli protected predators and rapists, not your kids. He voted against stopping sex offenders from working teen night events. He even voted to protect parental rights for rapists.
Jack Chitterelli should never be governor.
Are you still wearing enough layers to insulate Alaska?
You need the new...
"Are you here to help the kids too?" Jake let her hand go and touched her shoulder. "First things first, young one." And he gestured with his eyes toward her hand. Carney looked down and opened it. Inside, Jake had dropped a purple stone without her even noticing. "Amethyst," she whispered. "Yes, to protect. For now, we need to stay and wait." Carney thanked him and squeezed the purple stone tight. She listened and sat next to Will and her uncle, who were speaking with Chuck now, sitting back in his deluxe camper's chair, as if 5 minutes ago he had not witnessed a wolf man pulled off a cliff by a huge Sasquatch. To Dave, the scene looked insane and tranquil at the same time. He listened in and watched Rage, who seemed to just love the girl. His leash still on, Dave just didn't want to take any chances. Not after the things he had seen. Things he had seen! This whole trip had been a stay in Crazy Town, he thought, and spoke to Joe quietly. "Joe, we can't let these people stay out here. We shouldn't be out here." Joe answered in his best deputy calm. "I know it seems like it doesn't make sense, but inside we'd be trapped. Out here we have a good chance of keeping those things back." Dave was more than skeptical, more than scared, but he held that in and he listened in to Chuck and the others, all while keeping his eye on the tree line. George let those know of their new guests, and May said Tom was bringing coffee and asked if the newcomers would rather be inside. Coffee, Dave thought. How about a machine gun? A flamethrower, maybe? His mind twisted in the insanity of sitting out here, drinking coffee, possibly enjoying a slice of May's apple pie, for Pete's sake, all while being surrounded by things straight out of hell. "I believe so, Clay. You have a good point there," Chuck said. Dave felt like this was more of a barbecue setting than a horror movie he felt like he was trapped in. Jake and Crow tossed more of the smelly stuff in the fire, and the flames lurched up again, and the fragrant smoke filled the air. "Bob was a very caring man. He thought the world of his wife. It would be like him to warn us," Chuck told Clay and Rose. Rose added that they knew there was more to his warnings, that there was danger in the air. She smiled at Chuck. "If we can help, we are here. There's quite a bit going on out here, and I'd feel better if you and your family were safe inside the lodge," Sheriff Cook said. Rose smiled and said back, "Are you speaking of the Rougarou, Sheriff?" Dave was surprised. Did everybody know this stuff but him? Bill Cook, surprised but not shook at all, answered, "Yes, and a bit more, it seems." Jake stepped up and tried to explain. "Bill, the universe often sends us where we need to be. There are many here tonight who were sent. It is part of their journey. These two have second sight and an energy that is strong. Something stronger than all of us has brought us here. To change that, to interfere, would be..." He paused and thought a moment. Well, helping the other side. Sheriff Cook dropped his head a bit and rubbed his eyes. Jake, my friend, I don't like letting these civilians in harm's way. But after the things I've seen today, who am I to stand in the way of the universe? Yes, Will yelled out. He was thrilled to stay, and it was hard for him to hide. He jumped up, and the camera around his neck bounced with him. Okay, young man, quiet down, the sheriff instructed, and there will be no pictures. The things that happen here need to stay here, or it will be ruined forever. Will's face changed instantly. What? The word came out of him like air from a disappointed balloon. He speaks truth. People would overrun this land and destroy the things that live in harmony in these woods, Crow added. Will, still saddened, sort of understood, and sat down with a genuine pout. Jake looked around the circle at those he felt were gathered by forces he knew well. They were 13, counting Rage, who was the most vigilant of them all. Rage was looking right at him and more than seemed to understand. Jake smiled and nodded in his direction. Rage wagged his tail and sat straight up. Everyone, backs to the fire, eyes on the trees. Let it be known if you see the shadow shift or move in the treetops. Do not shoot at anything. Understand this. We must wait for this to settle itself, if we can. Only if necessary will we shoot to kill. Sheriff, Bubba, Joe, can you please place yourselves between the others so each of you cover the circle? Bubba spoke up. Whatever you need, Jake, and stood up, lifted his head, and scanned the trees. Will they come from up there, do you think? We do not know. Jake looked toward Rose and Carney. Perhaps you will let us know if you connect to anything. Carney smiled back at him and squeezed the amethyst in her hand. I will for sure. Jake moved out of the circle. Crow tossed more gray wormwood on the fire, and the smoke billowed into the tree's shadows. Jake moved off toward the tree line, closer and closer, and this made Dave's skin crawl. Rage watched with him. Jake kicked at some brush, bent over, and picked up a thick branch, reared back, and tapped on the trunk of the tree. Bang, bang, bang. Its striking sound echoed out and away from the watchers encircled around the fire. Then again the stout man with the calm demeanor whacked at the tree with the branch. His long, black, braided hair bounced off his buckskin jacket with the force as he did.
If you need full dentures but can't deal with the endless, expensive dentist visits, you need to see this. I used to hide my mouth.
Bang, bang, bang. A methodical, rhythmic beat again. He waited, and to Dave seemed to listen with his eyes closed to the wind. One more time, bang on the trunk of the tree. In the soft silence, not even a cricket chirp, Dave noticed. Only the wind answered back. Its movement through the drying leaves and branches were the night's only sounds. Dave for a moment allowed himself to close his eyes and just listen. The air felt different, heavy or thick, but not unkind or unpleasant, just different, he thought. Then, from a distance, an answer came. Bang, bang, bang. Dave quickly opened his eyes and looked deep into the wooded darkness. Jake still stood by the tree, the thick branch held in front of him. He leaned on it with both hands like it was a cane, and he was about to give his rendition of a Fred Astaire dance to Putting on the Ritz. Dave looked at the calm found on the weathered face of the man who truly knew things. Things both good and bad, both enlightening and frightening. Bang, bang, bang. The sound echoed again, and a knowing smile grew slightly across Jake's face. "Is there someone out there, Joe?" Dave whispered. "Something," Joe whispered back. "Those wolf things are answering Jake somehow?" Dave asked, confused, his mind slowly swirling from surprised confusion into "oh hell no" land. I don't think so, my friend. It's the Sasquatch, I believe." "What?" Dave started. Joe held up a hand to signify, "Wait just a minute." Used just 2 fingers to point towards his eyes, and then moved his fingers toward the tree line as if to tell Dave, "Look over there." Dave followed where Joe was pointing. There, Dave thought he saw movement within the shadows beyond the first trees near the wood line. Joe reached over next to him and tapped George on the knee and repeated the movements with his fingers from his eyes to the trees, and George also looked there. Jake saw too and focused on the spot. Joe held up his arm and snapped his fingers to grab the attention of the others. A quick flash of grayish blur ran between the trees. The snap of twigs and rustling leaves gained the attention of those who weren't already looking in that direction. "Weapons down, but ready, folks," Sheriff Cook said softly. Bubba grabbed Carney beside him as they stood up and moved her a bit behind him to protect her. Of course, she strained to look, the amethyst clutched in her hand. She whispered out loud enough for everyone to hear, "Don't shoot! It's scared! I can feel it! It's so scared!" An odd creature emerged from the shadows and into view. Gasps of surprise went around the circle as the viewers realized what they were seeing. A young Bigfoot. Although small, he still reached at least 5 feet tall. It held on a small tree by the dirt road about 15 yards away. Dave could not believe his eyes and wrapped the leash tighter in his hand without even noticing, and grabbed Joe's shoulder with the other in disbelief. Rage didn't bark or move, but the grayish-brown furry creature had his full attention. Bubba said it best for all when he whispered, "Holy shit," low and long, as if the words were the very wind blowing through the trees. The baby Squatch just stood there, looking at them in the same manner. They were looking at him, probably with the same confusion mixed with fear and wonder. Carney again spoke out. "His mother is close. She's coming. Please don't shoot him." "Nobody will harm them, little one," Crow spoke with assurance. "We are here to help them." Carney relaxed a bit, grabbed Bubba's big arm and squeezed at a handful of sleeves she found there. Rose did similar to Clay's arm and added her thoughts to the circle. "He is lost. But Carney is right. Mama's coming." "He is just amazing, Clay. Just a babe, he is." Clay nodded, and Jake hit the tree with 2 more bangs that echoed off into the night. The baby Squatch looked toward him and blinked slow. Jake put down the branch and walked toward him with his hands out to his side, palms up, and was chanting a sing-songy melody that seemed to send a calm among the circle and the Squatch. Time seemed to just hold there in the stillness, as Jake stopped just 20 feet or so in front of the baby. His calming tone seemed to lift the heavy air around them. The little one's face seemed to show it as well. It stood there, still holding the tree, and Dave wondered what was in those magical words Jake sang in his native tongue. They all stood in awe, and time seemed to just stand still. "Well, I'll be," came a voice behind Dave, and he turned to see May, Grey Wolf, and Tom, each holding a weapon in one hand and thermoses and cups in the other. "Isn't he just the sweetest thing you ever saw?" The sheriff moved over and motioned the newcomers in quickly. Jake slowly raised one arm up and started to walk backward toward the others. "Here she comes," Carney whispered, and squeezed herself into Bubba. Will leaned into her and held on too. A loud, wailing moan came from behind the little creature, and he quickly looked behind him. Jake backed up faster and almost knocked into George as he reached the circle. "Here they come!" Jake exclaimed, as he steadied himself with George's help. Rage barked once and moved in front of Dave, and Dave wrapped his arms around his friend, afraid to look away a second. All at once, the wail became louder. It was almost in sight. "Steady now, everyone," Bill Cook reminded, and May dropped her thermos. "Don't any of you dare shoot her. Don't you dare." "We won't, May," Chuck assured her. A larger version of the little creature appeared out of nowhere, just behind the little one. Dave gasped, as did several next to him, as they watched the little one reach up with his arms and his mother pick him up and tuck him under one huge arm in one quick move, all made with her eyes ever on the crowd of humans. Some with their hands over their mouths. A couple more held their hands to their hearts. Chuck took off his hat in reverence, and Bubba now held on to Carney a bit tighter. "Holy shit."
Trenton Democrats are the reason why your electric bill is so damn high. I'm Jack Chitterelli, and I'll change that. Vote November 4th.
How to stop estrogen spikes in men over 40.
There are 3 areas on a man's body that indicate a hormone problem.
The words again escaped him slowly, like air from a balloon with a pinhole. "You can say that again," Chuck added to it, and Grey Wolf smiled. The mother looked directly at Jake, and Jake nodded and said, "Go." Rose broke the moment with her next revelation. "There is something else, something bad." All at once, the Sasquatch moved, looked behind her into the woods, and broke into a run, running along the tree line and the dirt road that ran down the mountain and toward the garage below. Rage looked deep into the woods, and Dave felt the rumble of a growl in his chest before he heard it. "It's not good, fellas," he warned. Joe, George, and the others raised their weapons, and Bill Cook warned them to only shoot if necessary. Jake held up a hand and said, "Look," as he pointed just in front of where the mother Sasquatch path was. A bright white light seemed to appear between the trees there. It gleamed outward, like someone turned on a flashlight high in the tree. Then all at once the light became longer and wider. It began to almost sparkle, and Rage added a quick bark to the scene. "I see it, boy." At the same time, Joe said, "Now what in the actual hell is this?" As light grew in brightness and length, the sparkles almost turned into what looked like bubbles to him. "Orbs?" whispered Will. "Yes, son. When a portal opens, anything can come through," answered Crow. "Orbs?" Dave whispered his question, not really expecting an answer. Crow and Grey Wolf moved close to Jake, and they seemed to be speaking in a prayer cadence together. Crow, with his tall cowboy hat with the many feathers stuck in its band, laid at his feet in front of him. The turtle rattle in his hand slowly kept the beat of their words. The circle of observers then witnessed the orb starting to fall from the line of light, like a waterfall of brightly lit bubbles that floated off in all directions. "It's an actual portal," Carney said. "Yes, and there's so many of them," Rose said quietly, with a lilt of amusement in her voice. "Look at them all." Dave looked at Joe with a question on his face. Joe nodded in his direction with a smile. Jake held up his hand as if to say, "Wait." And as the mother Squatch was just moving out of sight and down the road and moving in and out of the trees there, the orbs seemed to stop. At least they slowed. There was a sound that came from the trees to their right, a horrible crunching sound that popped and cracked and echoed in the night. "Steady," Bill spoke again, and there, to Dave's amazement, came another gray being. It was not quite as big as the mother squatch, but rugged and stout. Perhaps a male, Dave thought. His hair was matted, and some of it gleamed with red in the moonlight. George added his own thought. "Just amazing." "It's injured," Dave said, to no one in particular. "Hold your fire, men," Sheriff said again, and the Bigfoot hardly noticed them. It turned and ran the way the mother had run, but behind him, was something different, an awful thing. "The wood beast is so ignorant, so weak. The wise one thought as it ran, its claws digging into the soft earth pushed him forward as he chased his prey. They protect their young, much like those intruders do. They help their weak. They put themselves in danger. They are not like us. We sacrifice to survive. We are stronger. We will take this territory and kill all that stand in our way. I will kill the male wood beast, then its mate, and toss its young to the burned one in my pack as a gift before I kill him too. He will slow us, and we must be strong to claim this land. I can smell the male wood beast's blood on the wind and its fear in its tracks. I will have him and prove to my pride I am still their leader. The rustling sound became louder. Huge sounding limbs began to crack, and the sound broke through the still night air. Dave felt rage tense, and he knew something big was charging in their direction. A rougarou broke out of the woods just behind the injured Bigfoot, and Dave felt rage try to lunge towards it, and he held on tight. "Only if you have to, Bill," Jake added. "Best to let nature fight nature if we can." Carney gasped, as did May at the sight of the creature, but no one screamed. It never even glanced their way, its sights on the Sasquatch it had been chasing. Joe had his barrel directed straight at it and knew if it grabbed the Bigfoot he would shoot and ask questions later. He would have to. Bubba now shielded both the teens with his body, the deputy taking over the scared young man inside.
It's spooky. Jack Chitterelli says we need to feel some pain from Trump's policies, like jacking up electric bills $200. The same Chitterelli who jacked up property taxes. It's true. High-tax Jack Chitterelli will cost you.
Summon the food!
Dave momentarily had forgotten about the long light that now came back into his view as the injured Bigfoot came closer to it. It wailed as it ran, the rougarou close on its heels and gaining ground. All at once the light seemed to rip open, like someone unzipping a parka, and a dark shadow filled its void. "What the hell?" Joe said, as a huge beast almost twice the Bigfoot's size stepped out of the light. "The protectors," whispered Jake, and the sound came from the emerging beast that seemed to echo off the mountain and back again. similar to the other Bigfoot creatures, yet different somehow. Bigger, yes, Dave thought, but meaner, its teeth sharp and displayed for them all in his scream. Joe wasn't sure where to aim now, but kept his weapon on the rougarou, whose own mouth seemed to drip with fury, and it too seemed to be covered with blood. But whose? Joe did not know. Chuck yelled to May, "Get in here quick!" And those left outside moved within the circle. Those with weapons pointed them toward the commotion. Those without them moved close to someone who did. Dave held his shotgun low, but followed the rougarou with it, as Joe did, still holding back rage. Dave heard Chuck call out to Jake, "Not too close, my friend," and turned his eyes toward the three men outside the circle and closest to the emerging beast. Jake was moving closer. His song grew louder as he did. Crow and Gray Wolf intensified their chanting too, and to Dave it all seemed like some outrageous dream that was not only confusing, but extremely terrifying. They all watched as the injured Bigfoot ran past the opening of the light, never seeming to notice the beast within it. As it did, the huge thing stepped out behind it and bent toward the rougarou chasing the injured one, in one fluid move. It let out another scream, and only then did it seem that the rougarou took notice of its presence and challenge. The rougarou stood to its complete height and growled back at the beast. It backed up and took a stance that almost reminded Dave of a boxer eyeing his opponent and calculating his next move. It seemed to forget all about the injured Bigfoot, who was now making his way down the dirt road, following where the two had fled. The beast, who barely moved far from the long light at all, could now reach right in front of the rougarou, whose growl, though horrifying, was no match for its own. It bared its teeth at the dog-man thing, and if Dave was a betting man, he'd have placed his last $100 down that he saw fear in the dog-man's eyes. Dave winced as the rougarou swiped at the huge beast in front of him with its claws, just barely missing the thing from the light. The beast reached out and grabbed the dog-man up in both hands and lifted it high in front of him. The dog-man shrieked and twisted in his grip, and to add to the macabre madness, light-filled orbs danced in and out of the light and around them, like champagne bubbles in an odd dance routine from hell. Dave heard gasps and small screams from the group, but who they came from, he didn't know. His eyes didn't move from the scene in front of him. As the beast lifted the dog-man, he saw it take a blow from a writhing claw, and blood flew from its chest, and he saw a wound grow there, and blood oozed from the dark fur. It let out a yell and lifted the dog-man higher, and in one swift move brought it down in a thunderous thud onto its knee, and the crowd watching winced at the sound of the dog-man's back cracking in half.
Mikey Sherrill supports lowering costs for New Jersey families. She supports a state of emergency on
Dave heard a distant "damn," long and drawn out. Bubba, maybe? Hell, it could have been his own voice he heard, he thought, as he watched the gigantic beast grab the dog-man by its head with one hand, giving a passing glance toward Jake and the other two men still singing, and drag the beast to the long, open pathway of light, and toss it through like a bag of garbage. Dave heard Joe whisper matter-of-factly, maybe to him or just to himself, "That's why we don't find any bodies." Then a shriek from behind, and Dave heard May yell, "Crow, look out!" and a bang from his shotgun split the air. More screams, and Dave looked toward Crow, aiming his weapon high, just in time to see a dog man with part of its head gone fall from a limb just above Crow and land with a thud right on the elder's feathered cowboy hat. Everyone turned to see May holding the shotgun she used to save her friend. The singing stopped, and the elder stepped back and away from the scene, stepping slowly back into the circle as those within made room. The portal beast walked slowly toward Jake as he backed up, speaking words Dave did not understand. And as he did, he held up his hands as if to say, "Hold your fire." The beast moved calmly toward the dead dog man, and Jake stopped just in front of the circle. Then the creature that had emerged from the light bent down and picked up the dead Rougarou, tossed it over his shoulder, gave one more look toward Jake, and took long strides with huge legs back to where the open light hung in midair. It gave one last roar as it disappeared through the light. Dave and the others watched the light slowly close and then shrink into little more than a twinkle in the trees, and it was gone. "Holy shit, Joe, what?" Dave started and was cut off by Chuck. "May, my girl, that was a hell of a shot. Are you all right?" Sheriff Cook added, "Yes, is everyone all right?" May brushed at the front of her dress with the shotgun tucked under her arm, muzzle down. "I'm fine, Charles. I couldn't let it hurt Crow." "And Crow thanks you, my friend," Crow answered back as he walked over, picked up his crushed hat, brushed it off, whacked it on his knee, and placed it atop his head with a smile. "It is a good day to die, but I could never go without my hat." Nervous laughter and confused mumblings moved through the circle. Jake spoke up and said he believed that this fight had been won, and he felt no more of the dogmen remained. Balance here had been restored, he felt, and the Bigfoot would settle now back in the higher ground, and that they had their territory back. George said in a calm voice, "What an amazing thing to see." Dave still held onto Rage's leash tight, more scared than he had ever been in his life. "Okay, wait just a minute. Is no one going to tell us what we just saw here?" The fear mixing with frustration, he continued, "What the hell was that thing? Are you trying to tell me?" Chuck broke in. "David, I think you know what you saw. It is quite a bit to take in, for sure. But we were all here. We all saw it. And you are not crazy." Dave shook his head, wiped a hand over his face, and looked at Joe. Joe reached out and squeezed his shoulder and bent down to pet Rage, who was wagging his tail now and seemed to understand better than anyone. Greta came over the walkie in George's pocket again. "George, we heard a shot. What happened? Over?" George, almost jarred out of a different world, jumbled for the walkie in his pocket. "Greta, yes, we are okay. Over?" "George, Hader and I are coming out. Can you cover us? Over?" "Tell them to come on. We got 'em covered." Sheriff Cook spoke now, and Tom, Bubba, and Joe readied their weapons and gazed toward the lodge's back exit as they came out. Chuck kissed May on the cheek and fixed a gray curl from her eyes, a move he had done many times over the years. He looked in her eyes and saw no fear there. Worse, he thought, for May to have to kill an animal, any animal. There would be feelings popping up later, he thought. "You saved Crow, May. Remember that." "I know, Charles. I'm more worried about the Squatch family that took off. Do you think they're okay? That one looked hurt." Rose joined them as she moved closer. "May, is it?" May shook her head. Rose continued, "I am picking up that they are scared, but will head back to their camp, I'd guess you'd call it. It seems they were trying to draw those nasty wolf things away from the others. There are others. But I also picked up you know this. You have been friends with them quite a while, I suspect. May and Chuck both smiled now, and Crow made his way to the conversation. He reached in and kissed May on the cheek and added a thankful nod to her, and a slight blush rushed across her cheeks. They are very fond of May's apple pies. Greta and Tater approached the circle as Rose smiled and understood now that Charles and May and probably half the people here tonight had done their best to help those woodland creatures over the years, to keep their secret and preserve their land. Clay was hugging Carney now, and Rose was grateful everyone had made it through okay. She saw Joe, Dave, the dog Rage, and Sheriff Cook walking around the site where the wolf thing was shot. Sheriff Bill was pointing up at the branch the thing was about to pounce from, and the dog was sniffing all around the area. Jake and Grey Wolf were tossing something from a bag towards where the portal had opened. Rose wasn't sure, and she looked to Crow, who caught what she was looking at and offered an explanation. It is an offering. Tobacco. It is the way. Nature to nature. Respect.
Trend Democrats are the reason why your taxes are so damn high. I'm Jack Chitterelli, and I'll change that. Vote November 4th.
You got to hear about this thing. There's this new air purifier out there. It's basically a mold killer that destroys hidden spores and makes your...
Rose and Chuck both nodded, and Rose breathed in deep. Her inner intuition told her tonight was long from over, but she could not put a finger on it. All seemed well right now, but there was something. Carney and Clay were introducing themselves to a large man that came with another older woman. There was an energy there Rose caught right away. She knew in an instant that the woman had a very powerful ability, a channeler, she thought. Not unlike her Carney. But the energy was from the large man. He was giving off an energy of innocence, probably had an autist quality. People probably mistook for what some Southerners called slow. This man was not slow by any means. He was extremely smart, caring, trusting, and vulnerable, but had an inner light that was so pure and full. To Rose, it was not only a pleasure to see, but a welcomed addition tonight. "Who's that man there, May?" Rose asked. "That's Tater Daniels. That's my friend Greta with him. Come on, I will introduce you to them." May took Rose's elbow, and they started to make their way over. Rose called to Carney to come meet the newcomers to the circle. She knew Carney would pick up on their energy, too. Rose looked around for Will. She looked over toward the men gathered where May had shot the wolf thing. Not there. Over to where Jake and Grey Wolf were. He wasn't there. Her mind filled immediately with worry. "Will!" she cried out, and everyone's attention was on her. Carney looked around and yelled out, "Billy Ray!" Dave and Rage both moved in fast, as did the sheriff and his deputies. Bill Cook spoke out. "He has got to be here somewhere. Everyone take a direction and let's stay close." Just then, they all heard an engine start up. A small one. Not a truck. Not quite. Chuck's ears perked up. "That's my rig!" He looked just beyond the lodge, his view blocked beyond it, where he had left 4 of those rigs in wait, if they had needed one. He saw dust kick up and float behind the lodge, and he moved toward the front of it, waving everyone with him. There came Will, fast and furious from around the lodge. He had that 4-wheeler side by side wide open and whizzed past them and headed for the dirt road the Bigfoot had taken. "That little shit has got one of my 4-wheelers. Will!" seemed to come from several people all at once. Everyone either ran out to cut Will off or stood and yelled. But Carney was the only one to reach him. The young girl seemed to outthink everyone and ran in the opposite direction, waited just a second for Will to pass by, and he slowed just enough for his little sister to jump in. Then he floored it for all she was worth, and the two teens disappeared down the road the Bigfoot had run, the road toward the garage, the dead children's playground, and the place where Jeb had lost his life just hours before. "Aw, hell! Now what?" Chuck exclaimed, throwing his hat to the ground, and he kicked it out of pure frustration. Jake spoke up. "We must go. The spirits wish us to. This one will be our fight. It is meant to be." Grey Wolf added, "We were both brought together for this. All of us. We all must go." "You heard 'em, folks." Sheriff Cook, against his better judgment, agreed with the elders. Time and history with them had gained his trust. He didn't always understand, but he had learned not to fight them when issues of the supernatural woo-woo kicked in. "Everyone, get in a vehicle. Let's finish this," the lawman said reluctantly. Dave looked at Joe, and he shrugged and waved his hand toward one of the three remaining side-by-sides. Dave, he, and Rage took that one. Chuck and May and Tater to another, the rest in the sheriff's squad car and Jake's truck. Rose and Clay hugged as they rode in the bed of Jake's truck with Grey Wolf, Greta, and George. Tom and Bubba were in one of the last four-wheelers in that odd caravan, keeping a watch on the wood line as they followed. "Do you feel it too, Clay?" Rose asked her husband. "I do," he answered. "They will be okay, though. We will get there in time, Rose." Rose closed her eyes and thought hard before she spoke. "There's a true evil that waits for us, Clay. I think I know what it is, but how to fight it is the question. It's the worst power I have ever come across. It is what is called a soul reaper or soul collector. My guides say it waits for the weak to die or torments the living until it breaks their minds, causes it to go crazy, to kill another or themselves. It has been doing this for years, for centuries. This one preys on children mostly. Their energy is strong, and it gives its life somehow. They say it cannot be killed, but it can be cast out of here. But only if we can weaken it and make it show its true self to us." Rose squeezed Clay's arm hard as she spoke the words. Greta reached across between the two couples, bouncing in the old pickup bed as they ran over potholes and bumps. Greta grabbed Rose's hand and squeezed it. "We will fight it together."
Jack Chitterelli protected predators and rapists, not your kids. He voted against stopping sex offenders from working teen night events. He even voted to protect parental rights for rapists.
Jack Chitterelli should never be governor.
If you need full dentures but can't deal with the endless expensive dentist visits, you need to see this. I used to hide my...
Rose squeezed back and smiled. George held on to Greta and whispered, "You cannot be thinking of helping with this, Rose, but please do not put yourself in harm's way." Greta hugged him back and answered, "George, I have always asked for a way my gift could help, not just to see things I could not do anything about. If I can help tonight, I will. And I ask, if you love me, you will not stand in my way." She smiled at him and he nodded. A tear slid down his cheek. "I understand. I am with you, Rosebud." Rose held onto Clay as she witnessed the scene. She so very much felt the same as Greta did. She knew they would have to stand together. She knew that if they did not get this thing to release the souls it held, they would be lost forever. But how? Rose closed her eyes and bounced with the truck's rough ride down the dirt road. She could feel the energy grow darker as they rode. This thing had taken so many innocent people through the centuries, hiding in the shadows, preying on one soul at a time, creating zombie-like shells of those it took to do its bidding and trap others. Now her loved ones were in its sights. She knew it. She also knew they all may not make it out of this one. She closed her eyes and said a prayer for her niece and nephew now. Just let us get there in time, please. Jake knew. He steadied the truck as he followed behind Chuck's wild driving down the dark dirt road. He had known before he got to the mountain that day. The thing they were going to fight was ancient, its evil growing through the centuries. He had met it when he was meditating to prepare for this. All of his guides had come to warn him. In his mind's eye, he saw ancestors lined up behind their light. The dark thing broke through just enough to give him a warning, a message to pass along to all who would be crazy enough to think they could challenge it. One dark sentence that echoed still in Jake's mind. Tell them not to come. It could manifest as anything. An animal, a dark mist, perhaps even this young child he kept seeing. A child is often the form these things choose. People trusted children and would help them. Then it could easily manipulate the person, and before they were wise, it would already have them. It was pure evil and lived off the suffering of others. It must be stopped at all costs. He could not allow fear or worry. He could not allow weakness of any kind creep into his mind. The thing would know it. It would take advantage of it, and it would twist it and use it to beat them. Jake began to sing, and Grey Wolf next to him joined in. They would make their stand tonight. All those who rode with them, although they did not fully understand yet, all of them would be finding their own ground tonight, to make their stand against this evil. Inside his heart, Jake knew it was meant to be, and he sang as he steered into what felt like a road that led to hell itself. I'm so sorry, Carney, Will apologized to his sister as he took the last turn down the road. I just have to get a picture of that Bigfoot. This is the most unbelievable thing that's ever happened. No one is ever going to believe it if I don't tell where I took the picture. I can keep the secret. I would never forgive myself if I didn't try. Carney hung on to the roll bar of the four-wheeler, bouncing and nervously popping gum. I get it, Billy Ray, but this is crazy. What if there are more of those things out there? Or that Bigfoot that's hurt attacks us? They look scared. This is nothing to mess with. Will looked into the dark woods, thinking now he may not have truly thought this one through. He saw a light ahead, faint, but it was on, and he headed toward what he thought was that old garage they always pass on the way up the mountain. Will headed for it. Maybe the Bigfoot headed that way, and back around to the back trails up the mountain to avoid all those people gathered up at the cabins, he thought. Look, Carney! As they got closer, a dark shadow that was huge seemed to move quickly in the open parking lot in front of the building. Is that them? Will pointed and yelled out with excitement. I don't know. I don't see anything. The girl bounced in the seat and squinted to see. It went that way, toward the back of the garage. Carney, look again. Will pulled the four-wheeler to a stop, jumped out, left the thing running so its headlights would light its way a bit. Come on, it went this way. One picture, I promise, and we are out of here. As Carney slipped out of the vehicle reluctantly, she noticed yellow tape around the front of the garage. It said, Do Not Cross, Madison Police Department, in black block letters. What had happened here, she thought? And the energy that came from beyond that tape gave her the instant willies. This is what she had always called it when she felt evil present, true evil. This was also part of the reason she couldn't call her brother Will. The Willies were something she associated with very bad things all her life, and she loved her brother even though right now he was completely out of his dang mind. Billy Ray Dunn, this is stupid. Let's go back now. Something real bad happened here. Will ignored her or didn't hear her. His mind set on that picture. Just one picture, he thought, and kept on walking. Almost like getting that picture overrode all his common sense. Carney followed, partly because she didn't want to be alone near this, a crime scene? On the other hand, she would never let her brother walk alone toward whatever she was feeling was around the back of this building. Will saw a sudden shadow move through some old cars lit by moonlight. He turned on the light on his camera to help them see a bit more. Carney had a little unicorn flashlight on her keys, and she touched the blue glittered horn to turn it on. This is so stupid, Billy Ray. Please stop. Her voice was now showing tones of worry and a bit of well-warranted fear. Carney could see her brother, who had run ahead, chasing a shadow she never saw. He was at the back now of what looked like a junkyard, and beyond it, what Carney saw made her almost freeze with fear. A set of swings and a playground. She was here. The dead children's playground. Her brother ducked through a broken part of the chain-link fence and seemed to be looking with the light of his camera for the subject of his picture. No! She screamed, and Carney ran forward and felt like she was running underwater. She could hear herself yelling for her brother to stop, but it was as if her words were far away, coming from out of the dark woods ahead and not from her own mouth at all. She pushed forward and through the hole in the fence. The young girl almost fainted with the blast of energy that came at her now, and a strong wind blew across the open field. Its energy was heavy and dense and came straight at them. In the wind, she swore she heard a child laughing. They couldn't have gotten far, Chuck hollered over the four-wheeler's groan. May sat shotgun, literally. As her blue dress fluttered in the wind, she held on tight to the weapon that helped her save her friend tonight. Those crazy kids, Charles. We just have to find them. Tater spoke from the back with a distant, knowing tone. This won't be good. This is a bad place we are going. It's dark. It's bad in the dark here. I think it might be after that boy. Chuck called back to his friend. Tater, we are with you. Tater smiled, but added, those kids are already in trouble, and we better hurry. Chuck looked at May, and May's eyebrows went up, as if to say, this is new. Tater having feelings or predictions? Chuck just looked ahead and pushed the little all-terrain vehicle for all she was worth. Carney pushed through the dense wall of air. She felt it was getting stronger with every step. The young girl tried again to call to her brother, who was almost running toward the darkest part of the playground. Concerned she would lose sight of him, she strained to see within the shadows. Will, stop! But the words seemed to almost fall like weighted balloons. They fell from her mouth and went bouncing off in front of her without direction. Something was holding her back. The wind whirled around her and pushed at her harder. Okay, girl, get it together now, she said to herself. As she closed her eyes and asked her guides, I need you guides. Come stand with me. Walk with me. Help me through this. Just then she remembered the amethyst she stuck in her pocket and reached in and pulled it out. Connect me with the higher frequency spirits. Protect us and surround us now. Carney felt something let go just then. Warmth filled her and the wind seemed to ease. She took a step almost like something let go, just enough. Carney strained to see where her brother was now. She saw his faint light from the camera that hung around his neck. He was by the merry-go-round in the center of the field. Something was with him. A young girl in an old dress, it looked like. Carney was hit with energy, almost like it was shot out of a cannon directly at her. The little girl looked away from Will and right at her. Was this a ghost or something much worse? Carney's mind started to clear with the thought now, and she squeezed the purple stone again and shook it in her fist as she yelled, You get away from him now! Anger filled her and overrode her fear. The young girl started to run toward her brother. She knew she had to reach him fast. The ghostly girl smiled an evil smile as Carney ran toward them. The little girl held up a hand, and a green mist whirled out of every direction and started to meet together in a greenish, glowing mass in front of her. Within the mass, forms started to become figures, and the figures turned into kids. Carney was unable to move again and was forced to watch as the children in her path became clearer. Their details revealed themselves to her. A tall girl in overalls with long braids soaked in blood. A shorter boy with a broken neck and bulging eyes. Two boys who looked like twins in some odd costumey shorts that were bright red like the blood that ran from twin slit throats. A little girl with a blood-soaked dress that matched a bloody teddy bear. More seemed to come into view, and for a moment, Carney was scared again. Oh my God! The words slipped out of her mouth slowly, and she struggled to think. These are the kids. These are the ones being held here. Her thoughts came at a rapid pace in her mind. I can help you. Carney managed to get out the words as they started to walk around her slowly, encircling her. The fear grew in Carney as the macabre scene of children completed their circle, and she could see the girl thing with Will reach for him with one hand and flash her other hand toward Carney. The thing spoke out as she did, and its voice was harsh and dark. Hold her! Carney felt a bolt of energy hit her, and it knocked her backwards, but she did not fall. Carney felt like she was floating. She tried to struggle, but felt a hot energy that came from the kids from all around her. It felt like hot needles, and she could feel herself fading away. Like sleep had decided this was the time to take a long nap. The darkness in her mind slowly closed out the light, and faint words slipped out of her lips as she tightened her grip on the purple stone in her hand. Protect him. There! May said as a bit of the parked four-wheeler gleamed in their headlights. There, there! Chuck pulled in the lot, his wheels crunching over the gravel there. He caught a glimpse of the yellow tape and knew instantly it was what Bill had told him earlier. Jake had died here today. He hoped that was all the misery this place would see for a while, but Chuck McGee knew different inside. This was going to be a genuine shit show. He felt it in his bones. All the vehicles pulled in together and kept their headlights pointed in different directions, lighting up the garage and yard in an odd display of shadows that danced in the movement of the group getting out of the vehicles and moving closer together. Everyone with weapons had them ready, but safely pointed down as instructed by Sheriff Cook. Sheriff wanted everyone to stay back and wait for him and his men to call an all clear, but knew it would be futile at this point to try that, so he aimed for safety at best. Look, over there, yelled Bubba. He was pointing toward the playground behind the garage. I see a light. Will! Clay called out, and Rose added a loud, Carney! behind it. Everyone moved toward the area. Okay, keep calm, Sheriff Bill instructed. Joe, watch the rear. Jake, you men up here with me and Bubba. Everyone else, please stay close together till we get a beat on what's going on. They could not be far. This would be the last time Sheriff Cook had any control of the events this night. He knew it, and several others knew it in the crowd of 16 that moved through the old cars and trucks in the back of the garage. The sheriff walked ahead with a flashlight and his sidearm breaking the way in front of him. Bubba walked with him, forward observers in a way. Jake, Old Crow, Grey Wolf, Dave, and Rage still on a leash. The Dunns, Tater, the McGees, George, and Greta Steele. Tom and Deputy Joe Parker watching the rear of this odd parade of people, out pushing through weeds and over rusted bumpers and tire rims. This is just crazy, Dave whispered, and Grey Wolf answered without turning around. David, I fear this will be the test for everyone's sanity. Dave swallowed, not knowing what that meant, but after everything that had happened, he had no clue where reality and insanity started and ended anymore. Best to just push through, he thought, and did so. There seemed to be a storm kicking up, and the wind blew strong as they made their way toward the playground. Sheriff stopped short, and Bubba next, as they stepped into a clearing and in view of the dark playground's fence ahead. Jake held up his hand, and the line stopped, all except for the Dunns, who, led by Rose, pushed their way forward. Rose yelled out, Carney! At the sight in front of her, Tater looked over those in front of him. He could actually see the ghost children, and it frightened him. But he felt madder than he was scared, and this surprised him. But he didn't have time to be scared, he thought. His friends here needed help, and he would do what he could. He yelled out, "They got her! Those kids got her!" Everyone was stunned, but pushed into view of the playground. Sheriff Cook didn't see any kids, just Carney, oddly floating in midair. Rose and Clay saw them, though, much to their horror. Jake, being the shaman he was, saw them now, and he saw them in his dreams for months. And here they were, right in front of him. The elders, Crow and Gray Wolf, saw them too, and the thing that had Will on the merry-go-round. Jake was steady in his words and spoke them clearly and matter of fact. "Your weapons do no good now." He moved up slow past Bill and Bubba, merely spectators now. Gray Wolf and Old Crow walked with him. They stopped in between the others and the broken fence, and Jake called out again, "Rose, please come." Rose was shaken, but understood and tried to gather everything she had learned and took a step. Clay moved with her, and she whispered, I need to do this." He let her go ahead and followed. Jake, never taking his eyes off the playground, continued, "Greta, please come." Greta looked at George, and he shook his head. "No, Greta." But she squeezed his hand and with a look told her husband to let her. He did. As he kissed her hand, she reached out for Rose's hand. And Rose, not even seeing, reached back and took it as if she just knew. She gripped Greta's outstretched hand in hers, and they walked forward and stood beside Jake and the elders. Rose took Crow's hand to steady her as the full horror in front of her came into view. Clay, holding the other, squeezed tight but stayed silent. Jake spoke softly, and Dave strained to hear and moved up closer. Rage was silent, but for a steady rumble of that growl deep inside his throat, and Dave knew that one meant all business. "Not yet, Dave," Jake instructed. "Hold him tight. He will scare them off, but they must be destroyed tonight. There will be his time, too, I feel, but for now, hold him there." Dave took the instruction and tightened his grip on the leash and rubbed his friend's ear to soothe him. Tom reached down and patted the dog's head, too. "I know, buddy. Me too," he said, and Joe moved next to Dave and whispered, "Holy shit. I mean, oh my God." Dave said, "You were right the first time." Bubba was shaking, and Bill Cook reached up and pushed his weapon downward with one hand and added, "Steady, deputy. Steady now." Chuck moved next to Bill. "What in God's creation is this, Jake?" "Not God's creation. Evil, Charles. This is all evil." They all stood now at the fence, the elders, Greta, Rose, and Clay, closest to the scene. Are we all just gonna stand here?" George begged, scared for the kids and his wife. "Stand is exactly what we will do," Gray Wolf smiled. Seconds moved like hours as they waited for Jake to guide them, all of them not believing their eyes. Will Dunn sat with his head back and his face up toward the sky on the merry-go-round, holding on with both hands as it slowly spun a rickety circle and squeaked a ghastly, rusty sound that reverberated across the field of dark and broken playthings. A girl that looked about 8 years old stood over him, holding him by the camera strap around his neck, and seemed to be breathing him in. She leaned into Will's face and took deep breaths through her mouth. Will would go limp as she did, like he was in and out of unconsciousness as they spun around and around. Everyone saw her, some as a solid living girl, some as a glowing, transparent, dark figure, and others as a mass of black that moved in front of Will. The young man looked like he was more than dizzy, but in a trance of some kind. Jake knew the thing was doing its best to steal the essence of life from Will. He knew they needed to move fast, but not just scare it off. It would come back with a vengeance and take many more with it. This needed to be finished tonight. Though horrifying, the worst of the scene was Carney. She looked like she was hovering 2 feet off the ground. Her head was back and her mouth open in a silent scream, and her body floated there bent backwards, her arms floating by her sides. Little blue electric-looking lightning things seemed to come from her in all directions, and she looked like she was being electrocuted. The blue streams of energy came from a group of children that circled around her, each one more horrific than the next. All of them had a greenish glow about them. Dave thought they for sure looked dead or dying. One had a slit throat and the other what looked like a broken neck. One little girl held a teddy bear in a bloody hand. 2 were twins in what looked like Catholic uniforms. Jake saw that Carney was being held there. To Jake, it looked like they were holding her back from helping Will. Will was the one who needed help right away. Dave watched with the others, too stunned to move, and he couldn't believe what he was witnessing. Jake spoke up. "We must stand together. I ask you, Rose and Greta, to focus on the young boy. That is no child out there. Do you think you can hold it away from the boy?" Rose answered, "Yes, I know who it is." She looked at Greta, and they walked in that direction, taking steps together with Crow and Clay. The 4 of them focused on Will and the thing with him. The wind grew to a staggering strength. It blew from nowhere and everywhere at the same time. Dried leaves and sand gusted up and struck at the bystanders, and they shielded their eyes as it did. Rose, Clay, Greta, and Crow seemed not to notice or give in because they stood hand in hand against the wind and began sending their energy toward that merry-go-round. Will and that ghostly girl. Greta knew her energy was far more through these years, and she willed all of her light toward the thing bending over the boy. Crow and Rose did the same, and Crow whispered, "Use your love, Rose. It is made of darkness and cannot stand the light. We must weaken it. We will help you." Their grip tightened, and they stood together as the thing let out a ghastly laugh, pulled back, and aimed its attention at them. "You get away from him! You are not a child! I know who you are!" Rose screamed at the thing in front of Will. She knew to deal with it, she had to get it to reveal its true form. "You show yourself! Show me!" She screamed against the wind. The thing on the rickety merry-go-round lurched back in a laugh and started to fade. It seemed to break into a white mist that floated up and away from Will, but now shot forward and hovered right above him. It had a glow that pulsated and grew as it did. It started to take form within the mist, and it started to circle around Will. Dave thought it looked like a ghost of an old woman, with long arms stretched out in front of her as she flew. Long, white, tangled hair flowed behind the thing. A white dress, tattered and torn, flowed with it. Its wrinkled and weathered face screamed and laughed as it flew circles around Will, who was still held in some sort of a trance. It floated above him and then around him, then back up again. Each time it got close to him, Will's body would lurch up as if it grabbed and pulled him. It flew faster around the merry-go-round, and it seemed to spin as it did. Its laugh was deafening and sharp. Will circled around and around, and Joe looked at Dave and back again in disbelief. "Hold it there, Rose! We have the girl!" Jake yelled, and looked back toward the group. "Your weapons have no power here. It is your heart that will win this. Stand together. Do not fear. Send all of your good energy toward them. Think of a white light and focus toward them." Bubba laid down his weapon. Joe did too. Tom and Chuck followed them, as did May and George. Sheriff held on to his. It would take a lot more for him to put his weapon down. May reached for Tater's hand, and yes, he took Chuck's. Joe took his, and on down the line they all clasped hands. Bill Cook, the last in line, finally took his deputy's hand, his pistol in the other, ending the line of observers. What are we supposed to do here, Bubba?" he whispered. Bubba answered back. "Send good energy," Jake said. Sheriff Cook twisted a smile back in disbelief. Bill Cook closed his eyes and prayed. Rose called out against the wind again, and out into the darkness she called in her light. "All our guides gather here. Dispel this evil back to where it came. I call on all spirits of light to help us banish this dark force." The ghostly woman laughed, and green light flashed from its mouth as it did, and it hovered over Will. The poor kid looked as spent as little Jacob had, Dave thought. "She tried to take me," he had said. Could this be what he meant? Dave grimaced and tried to focus. Rage growled and pulled at the leash just enough to say, "Let me at him, Dave." Dave held firm. He, too, said a prayer. "Look," Tater spoke up, to no one in particular. "There's something else on that merry-go-round." A light began to form in front of Will. As the others this night, it started to grow in size. They all saw this one, as it gained a bit of color and took shape. The flying ghost backed away from it and made some figure eights above Will. It took off and flew across the playground and toward the children holding Carney. It seemed to try to get close to her, but was held back somehow. It didn't seem to be able to get itself in that circle. Dave thought perhaps those sparks were coming from Carney and not at her. The old woman lurched back in midair, laughed its hard laugh again, and flew through the air at Will. The light thing that stood in front of Will now came to form. It was a large man, in fishing waders and a floppy hat. He gave off a greenish-white light and stood between Will and the ghost lady, whose laughter slowed and became shallow, as did the merry-go-round. It spun to a rusty stop. The evil thing hovered in front of the ghostly man and seemed to hiss as he held up one translucent hand in front of her, as if to say, "Stop." Light seemed to sparkle from his hand and float out toward the hovering thing. Chuck yelled out, "Well, hell on a skillet, that's Bob!" "He's helping, Charles. Look," May added with delight. Ghost Bob stood in front of Will, protecting the boy, and the wind died down. Tater yelled out, "That's it, Bob. Keep it up. And it's real good to see you." May and Chuck both smiled at this. How could you not? Rose gained her strength now and called out again, "You show yourself! Show me! I know who you are. You are a soul reaper. You cannot have his. Will, fight, honey. Wake up and fight." Will started to shake his head and hung on with one hand, still not looking like he was fully back. To Dave, it looked like Bob's ghost was buying the kid a little time here. He heard Jake chanting loudly with Grey Wolf and looked towards Carney. Little lights started to sparkle in the darkness around them, and it looked to Dave and Joe like a few orbs were forming from them. They grew in size and danced above Jake and Grey Wolf's heads. Dave didn't know where to look, but he noticed Rage was watching there too. The orbs floated into a circle and now danced over Carney, who was still hanging in midair. Joe whispered, "Look," and nodded toward Jake and Grey Wolf. A very bright orb moved around them and then hovered in front of them, and a sparkling mist formed there. It was a beautiful, bright white. "An angel?" Dave whispered. "I don't know," Joe whispered back. The bright form became the figure of a woman, so bright it was hard to look directly at it. Dave could actually feel warmth from that direction, almost like having the sun on you, and a smile seemed to grow inside him that spread to his face. He could see she had long dark hair in a ponytail that ran down the front of her shoulder. The light lady opened her arms and seemed to send light from her hands that circled around the ghost circle of children and Carney. They dropped their hands and the blue electric sparks just stopped. Carney lurched up and just fell to the ground with a thunk. Carney gasped a breath of air and sat up. "Ouch! Hey, what happened?" Carney yelled, shaking her head and looking around. "Oh, no!" She struggled to her knees and pushed herself up and took notice of those who surrounded her and tried to get her bearings. She rubbed her sore back as she focused. The children were still there, but motionless and absent somehow. She saw Jake and Grey Wolf chanting in a bright light whose glow almost blocked out the elders, who sang louder and louder. There was a woman in the light. Carney realized. The brave girl squinted and shielded her eyes to get a better look. She looked familiar. "Susan!" she called out with glee. Jake called out to Rose. "Now, Rose, fight!" Crow called back to the observers behind him. "Who owns this property, Charles? If you do, tell that entity it must go and cannot stay. Banish it from your land." Chuck McGee spoke up, almost fighting the wind with his words. "I'm not the owner, Jake. Tater is." Tater heard this and was shocked and confused at these words. He looked away from the commotion in front of him and at his friends. "What?" May squeezed Tater's hand and whispered sternly, but with kindness, to Tater, "That's what I've been trying to tell you. You own this land and the garage on it, Tater Daniels. Your daddy left it to you. We didn't want anyone to swindle it away from you. We have been keeping it safe. It's all yours, sweetie." Tater swallowed hard, trying to process this. "Tater, you must stand for what's yours. Go. You can do this. That boy needs you. Go help him and Bob." May let go of his hand, and so did Chuck, and Tater took a step. Tom urged his friend, "We're with you, Tater, and you're not alone." We need you, Tater. Please try. Greta called, and Tater moved quickly past the fence and took Greta's outstretched hand in his, reached down and summoned his sternest voice. You let him go. You get off my land. That's it, Tater, Crow whispered. Again. You go back to where you come from. Get out of here. This is my land. You get off in it. May smiled, closed her eyes, and added more prayers with the others. Jesus, we need you and your angels. Now please help us. The flying ghost winced back and screamed. It floated toward the line of light warriors, screamed again, and bared its sharp teeth. Its stench made the line of people pull away from it. It hung directly in front of Rose and smiled a sinister smile. Rose was sure she had seen before. From its lips came a dark and ancient voice wrapped in stench and knowledge. You cannot have them. They are mine. They are part of me. Your prayers cannot help you now. Rose closed her eyes and spoke out to her light. Bind this thing of darkness. Fill it with your light. She repeated it, and the others joined in. The thing screamed in pain and flew back away from them, and it flew back over to Will again. Its energy seemed to slow, noticeably weaker. Ghost Bob seemed to squint, and more light energy came from him. Dave noticed it looked like it made him weaker somehow after he did. Rose screamed out, I call on all my guides to weaken this creature. Show me who you really are. The thing reared back its head and yelled toward the sky. The green light from its mouth seemed to be dimmer now. The old woman's specter seemed to fold over on itself and then fall or dive to the ground. When it hit, a black dust came up from the sand. The black mass of dust seemed to gather and grew dense, and it started to writhe and form into a shape. A huge black skeletal head pulled up from the dark mass. Where its eyes were, a red light seemed to come from it. It pulled itself up like it was emerging from a hole in the ground with claw-like hands that pulled at the sand around it. Dave's skin crawled up his back as he felt he was looking into the eyes of evil itself. The creature writhed and screamed as it pushed up from the black muck. A wet-looking bony body grew up under it. Its black skin pulled tight over its long bones, and to Dave looked like one of those skeletons he had in the science room back at college that someone had dipped in black gloss paint. There you are, you foul creature, you soul snatcher. I call on all high vibrational beings to cast you back into the depths of darkness. You release those souls. Rose spoke with authority at the thing. Crow jumped in. You must release the souls of these children. They do not belong to you. You must release them and go back to the dark pit of the abyss. The creature twisted and screamed as if in pain. Tater yelled again, Go! Get off my land! Almost surprising himself with his own words. You get off and let those kids go. Crow began to pray loudly now. O Great Spirit, take from this creature what is not his, and give back the essence of these children. Banish it in the name of all that is holy, and cleanse this land again. Rose repeated, Release them, release them. Clay, Greta, Tater, Crow, and the others started with her. Everyone joined in. Release them, echoed from all around. The dark creature stood now, towering above the line of people. It swayed as if its bony black legs would give out. Will seemed to come to and let out a scream, but seemed frozen where he sat. The creature screamed again too, and it twisted and writhed against the words slung at it. It batted at things above it that Dave did not see, and to him looked much like it was swatting at flies, to Dave, that were invisible. Carney, getting the idea of what was going on here, screamed too. "You let them go, you soul reaper! You cannot take away what is not given. These children are not yours." Carney looked at Jake, and he nodded. She squeezed the amethyst still gripped in her hand and reached towards Susan's ghost. "Help me," she pleaded, and Dave watched as the ghostly hand reached past the grotesquely maimed ghost kids and seemed to take Carney's hand. A shaft of light rose from them as they touched, and the children's glow seemed to change and started to sparkle as the light spread around the circle. Carney chanted now too, "Release them," and pushed her hand palm out toward the creature. Balls of her light energy flew from it and circled the beast. Tater screamed out again, "You get off my land!" The chanting grew louder, and the creature twisted and threw its head back and screamed. Its long black forked tongue leaped from its mouth and twisted in the air as it screamed. Thick black goo surged over its teeth and hit the ground in sloppy splats. It flowed in an even stream like a river of darkness. It bent forward, holding its middle, as if he was throwing up this nasty substance, and a roaring sound came from within it as it did. It dropped to its knees into the black pool of goo, bent over, and its head lurched forward, mouth open into a silent scream now. Dave could see a light. A white light started to come from its throat, and tiny sparkles rolled out of its mouth and drifted into the air. The sparkles grew into little glowing bubbles that floated off and away from it, and toward Carney and the ghosts of Susan and the children. "Now, David, let him go now!" Dave, shocked, did as he was asked and let go of the leash. Rage took off toward the creature. It bent forward and gasped and drew back as Rage barked and growled his best. The creature seemed to start to melt, and its body seemed to retreat back into the black goo that had fallen at its feet. It writhed and screamed in pain, and Dave thought of that witch in that Oz movie that got hit with the bucket of water. What a world indeed, Dave thought. Rose screamed back, "We banish you into the dark abyss. You can never return to this place. These souls are not yours. You have no power here." The thing hissed loudly like a snake caught in a trap. Rage growled at the hissing thing and barked his own warning. The thing raised its claw to cover its face. The red light from its eyes dimmed into darkness, and it continued to melt completely into the dark puddle. Its last scream gurgled up from the black goo, and the black bubbles popped on its surface. The gooey mess broke apart and turned into a black mist that rose and dissipated into the night air. The atmosphere changed. The wind stopped completely, and you could feel the air seemed lighter. "You can feel it's gone," Dave said to Joe. "I feel it too. Look." Joe answered and nodded his head toward Will. Rage ran to Will and licked his face, looked up toward Bob's ghost, and now wagged his tail. Rose fell to her knees with exhaustion, and Greta and Tater caught her. Old Crow took out his turtle rattle from his buckskin coat pocket and shook it as he quickly made his way to Jake and Grey Wolf. Dave focused on Rage, not knowing what else to do, and it seemed the dog was not afraid of Bob's ghost now. If Bob was the ghost in his cabin, Rage didn't like what he saw then. So what's different? He thought maybe Bob was no longer angry, just worn out it seemed. And Dave, as usual, did his best to understand his best friend's lead. Clay ran to Will, too, and hugged him tightly, and rubbed Rage's ears in thanks. Clay looked up at Bob. Thank you so much for helping him. Now, let us help you. Walk toward that light. Go get your peace and happiness. Bob's ghost seemed to back away from the scene of the two weary huggers, and down off the merry-go-round, and only then seemed to notice the light coming from the circle of kids. He slowly seemed to glide that way, and all at once he exclaimed, Susan! Dave heard him loud and clear, and the sound of his voice seemed pleading this time. Not the gruffled, angry voice that came through the radio that night. The orbs all seemed to move with Old Crow and circled over the heads of the elders. Several of them dipped down, one at a time, and seemed to melt into the ghost children. Joe whispered, Would you look at that? As they did, each ghost kid seemed to light up brighter, and then fade into a mist, moved through the air, and hovered next to Susan. One at a time, they all disappeared and collected together into Susan's light, and Dave could hear Carney saying, That's right. You are free now. Go with Susan. She will guide you to the light. Go now. Rose looked toward her niece and smiled. Look at them all. That horrid thing took so many. Greta whispered, They are all free now. All free, Tater whispered back as they sat on the ground hugging Rose. Tears started to roll down the big man's face as they watched the last of the children turn to the glowing mist and hover with the ghost of Susan and the other orbs that danced there. Jake spoke to the air. Guide them, Great Spirit. Take them to the light. May they find peace there. Carney smiled at Susan and whispered, Thank you. But there's one more. Carney nodded toward the ghost of Bob, who was right behind Jake and the elders now. You can go with them too. Go with her, and go to the light. The ghost of Susan held out her hand toward her husband. Jake and the elders parted and let him go through. Bob was holding his hat in his hand and looking at his wife with surprise and doubt. Susan? Yes, Robert, it is me. Walk with us. It's time to go. He reached out his hand and touched hers. The light around him started to brighten and sparkle with light. Incredible, Bill Cook spoke out softly. Do you see it, Bubba? Bubba nodded, and that big man was crying too. Bob looked toward the people lined up still holding hands and set his eyes on Chuck McGee. Chuck clutched at his hat and squeezed, doing his best to hold back tears himself. We know what was done to you, and that man is paid. You go. We are all good now. You go, my friend, and thank you for your help. I will see you on the other side. Bob's ghost smiled and took a step toward Susan. The orbs of light, the glowing mists all came together as Bob and Susan met. They all seemed to swirl together, lift, and then disappear into the night sky. Carney ran and threw her arms around Jake and hugged him tight. "I knew we could help them. Oh, thank you," she said as tears of joy and exhaustion ran warm down her face. "You did it, little one. Your heart kept them safe. I told you, you were sent. The universe knows what it needs. It is up to us to answer the call." The tired girl hugged both Gray Wolf and Old Crow and saw Clay walking to Rose with Will and Rage. "Will!" She ran to her brother and hugged him too. "I tried to stop it. Oh, Will, did we get it too?" "We all did, sweetie. We all did," Rose said as Tater helped her to her feet. George held Greta tight and they all hugged together, each one completely spent in their own way. Energies drained, worry and amazement and adrenaline all running on high now. Rage ran to Dave. "Good job, boy, good job." Chuck and May rushed up to Tater. "We're all dang proud of you, young man." May hugged him, and he knelt down to hug her back. May kissed his cheek, and he blushed, and rushed questions at her in his own way. "Did you see Bob? He looked so good, didn't he? I mean, for a dead man. Is this really all my land, Miss McGee?" "Sure is, Tater," May smiled in answer. "I don't know what I'm going to do with such a place." As they walked toward the others, Chuck asked him, "Well, Tater, what do you want to do with it?" Tater stopped and thought a moment. An idea showed bright in his eyes. I'd like to bulldoze it down. Put in an orchard if I could. Lots of trees for the birds. Always wanted that." Chuck slapped him on the back. "Well, Tate, sounds great. From dark to light. Give it back to nature." Tater smiled and was visibly excited now. "I'd like to grow apples. Lots and lots of apple trees." Jake, walking behind them, overheard. "That's a fine idea, Tater. Your gift will help heal this land, and they do love apples." May smiled at Jake. She knew. She always had known. Everyone gathered now, sharing their amazement and absolute awe of what they had seen. Rose, Carney, and Greta were exhausted. Poor Will had to be filled in with Carney on what they had missed. He was disappointed to have missed such an event, but sadder he had no pictures to prove it. And his head hurt a lot. "Okay, everyone move safely through this junk out here. Parker, Bubba, make sure these ladies get through this junkyard safe." Bubble smiled and answered, "My pleasure, Sheriff, but I believe these ladies will do just fine." Bill Cook smiled. Agreed, Deputy Danker. Agreed." And he tipped his hat to Greta as she walked by arm in arm with George. Sheriff Cook stood at the fence and took a last look across the empty field. It was almost impossible for him to fathom the horrors and miracles that both happened here on this day. He took off his signature Stratton hat, looked toward the stars, and said, "Thank you," softly to the night. He choked back his own tears, put his hat back on, and adjusted its brim. "Deputies, let's get these folks back to the cabins. That's damn sure enough for one night." Rage barked and wagged his tail and jumped around in a quick circle as if he knew. Dave knew he did, if anyone understood. It was Rage. Things settled down on the mountain the rest of that night. A few stayed around the fire a while, talking over the events of the night and the things they had seen. Adrenaline, more than fear, kept them awake, it seems. But eventually, Sheriff, the elders, and Bubba left to head back down the mountain, and everyone yawned their good nights and went off to their beds in well-deserved rest. Those who had loved ones there kept a closer eye on them and held on a little tighter when they hugged good night. The crickets chirped again, and the owl hooted at the moon, but the worried wailing was not heard again that night from high up the mountain. Dave and Rage slept together again on the couch in cabin 22, only catching the last few hours of dark before the dawn. They woke early, and Dave didn't even bother with the new coffee pot. He would drive down to the lodge this time, see if May had some good coffee, and head down and away from the mountain for a while, even for a day or two. "We need a vacation from our vacation, don't we, boy?" Rage barked his answer and ran for the screen door. Okay, buddy," Dave laughed. "Right behind you." As they drove toward the lodge, Dave couldn't help but think of how so many horrible things could go on in such a beautiful place, and to just go back to its normal beauty afterwards. He drove slow, and he listened to the birds sing their morning songs, and Rage watched the squirrels running through the fallen leaves. Dave parked in front of the lodge and looked around. All seemed normal, but it was still surreal somehow. He looked toward the woods that just hours ago he saw a huge beast walk out of a light and kill a rougarou with its bare hands. He shook at the thought, and his eyes fell on a huge limb that had its end broken off when a sweet old lady shot a dog man out of it to save her friend. "It happened," Dave said out loud and patted Rage on the back. "Lord help us. It happened, all right. I need some coffee, Rage. You want to see if May has a biscuit laying around?" Rage barked a definite yes, and they got out of the car and walked up to the porch. Dave stopped at the carved wood totem pole that stood at the right of the entrance and nodded to it. He had gained a new respect for the odd and woo-woo stuff, he thought now. "Thanks, fellas." He opened the door and tinged the bell at the lodge office. Chuck McGee was at the desk as he walked in, drinking coffee, and already had a smile. "Good morning to you, Dave, and to you, Rage." "Oh, good morning to you, Chuck. I just wanted to stop in and let you know I was going down the mountain today to check on a few things." Chuck laughed. "Need a bit of civilization, do you?" Rage barked. Dave smiled. "Oh, I understand after the things we saw last night." Chuck smiled back. "I wonder if you'd do me a little favor. I was going to go do this myself, but this just seems fitting somehow." Dave said, "Sure will. What can I do for you?" Chuck said, "Wait here a second." Chuck walked back to his office, and Rage took the chance to nudge at Fritz the cat who was sitting on the sofa. Dave thought he would get a snoutful of cat's paw for it, but he didn't. Fritz just rubbed up against Rage like they were old friends. "I'll be," Dave smiled. "Dipped and fried," Chuck finished as he returned, handed Dave something, and explained what he wanted Dave to do. Dave smiled and said he'd be back later and maybe they could take in some fishing. Dave and Rage left the office, and as he passed the cigar store Indian on the porch, he noticed the red and white peppermints had been changed to candy corn. "Well, May, I don't know how you do it, old girl." He laughed and took one of the candy corns from the outstretched hand and said, "Happy Halloween to you, too," to the staunch face of the carved native warrior there. "Here you go, Rage." Rage took the candy and wagged his tail, and they drove down the mountain together. Dave took the turn Chuck told him to, and the tires rolled over the gravel road and into a lovely little churchyard. Dave and Rage got out and walked together, following Chuck's directions. Dave saw the spot and walked close enough to read the double headstone. Olson, Robert, and Susan. eternally. Well, Rage, this is the spot. Dave reached in his pocket and pulled out a plastic bag and emptied it into his hand. A gold pocket watch with a train on the front. He pushed the button, and for the very last time, it played its little tune. Dave closed it, bent down and touched the dirt below the headstone with his hand. Here, buddy, dig here. And Rage dug softly with his paws till he had a small hole. That's good, buddy. Rage stopped, and Dave put the watch in the hole and covered it with dirt. He placed his hand on the stone. You have your Susan back now, Bob, and thank you both so much. Rage barked, and Dave pet his head and smiled. Let's go, buddy. How about steak and eggs? Steak! Rage barked in definite agreement. Sheriff Cook and Bubba never spoke of the events that night with anyone but each other. The final result of Skeet's death was concluded as accidental, and the cave closed off completely. Jebediah Perkins's death concluded as undetermined animal attack. No body was ever found. There was an old truck registered to Jebediah Perkins found in the back trails behind the cave where the still was found. The truck bed was full of crates, and those were full of mason jars, and those were full of moonshine. In the truck's cab, they found an empty Vienna sausage can, a cracker wrapper, an empty silver flask, and a Marlboro box with 3 hand-rolled cigarettes in it, determined to be tobacco. Several of those cigarette butts were found in the ashtray along with a well-chewed toothpick. The moonshine and the truck were impounded. The Pepsi machine was junked, and as of now, Bill Cook has sworn off Stewart root beer. Some things are just best left to memory, he told Bubba. Tater kept the garage and only works on vehicles made in the year 1975 or older, sometimes the occasional tractor for a friend. Tom helps him in the garage and in the orchard that should have its first bumper crop this year. Elda has taken to handling Tater's accounting and office management. They have grown very fond of having lunches outside at the new picnic area by the orchard out in the back of the garage. Rose and Clay Dunn are currently writing a book on the history and hauntings of southern states. The chapter on a certain place in Alabama, although very long, will be void of many details of that one special night. The chapter deals more with how Carney, with help from some special guides, crossed over some lost children that just needed some good energy, direction, and a bit of love. There is a wonderful picture credited to William Dunn of a beautiful woman in a glowing light taken from an undisclosed location. George Steele's picture of the Swanson's thrush made the cover of the Audubon Society magazine. They did quite the write-up of him, too. He wore the cable-knit sweater Greta knitted for him in his picture for the article. While knitting George's new favorite sweater, Greta wore a very special ring on her finger, the one that belonged to her mother she had thought she had lost forever. Soon after their Halloween last fall, her new friend Rose had called her and explained that Greta's mother had come through to her and told her Greta had lost the ring in the bathroom sink and it was caught in the P-trap under it. George took apart the pipe, and there it was, still gleaming and still beautiful. George is still very active in bird watching. He is currently on the lookout for the elf owl at his favorite mountain getaway. Jake, Gray Wolf, and Old Crow frequent the mountain to visit their good friends and help keep the balance in its wonderful surroundings. Jake told Chuck McGee that the woods and its inhabitants seem peaceful and that the land is much happier now. And that was just fine with Chuck McGee. Chuck McGee takes in more fishing now, often with Joe Parker and Dave Weaver by his side, and of course Rage. Visitors still come to the cabins asking about the dark figure haunting the showers there, and Chuck just smiles and tells them there are no monsters in my cabins. He is currently working on a new project, a large carving of a Bigfoot he swears does not exist. May is still keeping him busy running the cabin resort and baking her wonderful pies. Most of them are apple these days. David Weaver is enjoying his new southern home, has grown more fond of the music and definitely the people there. Joe Parker visits to share steaks and stories with him and Rage on a regular basis. Joe often works with Dave on his job, which has taken both he and Rage to many disaster sites with the search and rescue team, many of them tornado-related. Rage received the Medal of Honor and Bravery from the governor for finding a 2-year-old boy under the rubble of a building. The brave dog was able to fit through a space under the rubble and reach the boy. Rage sat with him for hours as he was dug out from under an old clawfoot tub that was in his house 3 blocks away just that morning. Rage made a new friend for life, received a lovely picture, lots of handshakes and hugs, and T-bone steaks the entire week.